So recently I've been getting some requests on if people should flock to a KTM 300 or 250, and that they are a fairly new rider. Keep in mind though, the Husqvarna and the KTM are almost identical with some minor differences, so this will be more of a 250 versus 300 for a new rider. Now many of you guys know I am a new rider with about 1 year under my belt with no prior mountain biking experience. Essentially, I just saddled up and I learned on my own. So I decided to make this video because, well, we don't come across new riders anymore, and it seems like millennials and Generation Z guys are flocking to ATVs and side-by-sides because it seems safer, quote unquote, or they have no idea how to ride a dirt bike, yet alone a manual. So as time goes on, you are finding less and less new riders out there, and the experienced riders are always in the common. So sometimes these experienced riders forget what it's like to be new, or what it was like to be new. Me being a year in, I definitely still remember what it was like to be new. Heck, I'm actually still a new rider. I got the te250i when I was 5 months in of riding. I started off with my KLX 250 and the DRZ 400. Then I found my love for single track and hard enduro stuff. It was crazy because when I first started to do rocky, steep single track, I hated it. Wow. I'm definitely getting really bad air pump. Good because I'm nervous, but I'm keep going up like the single track over and over. But the correct term was I was not comfortable with it yet. So the skills had to catch up before the fun. Now it's all I want to do. Now I am at a level where I'm doing hard enduro rides and still trying to figure this out. My te250i so far has been great. I'm still able to grow into it, and I still think the power is pretty decent for me. Now let's say you want to upgrade your easygoing dual sport to a more powerful going dirt bike. You know for sure you want a 2-stroke, but you want something that you could keep in forever or grow into for a very long time. Kind of like me, you tend to be a keeper. Now I know there's a lot of options from TPI to carbs. You got 250s and 300s. The good part about a carb is you can add electron carb, but the TPI you don't have to mix oil and can just hop onto any gas station and fill her up. So it is kind of your call there. However, the carb seems to produce a bit more power versus the TPI. But after I received the new mapping from the dealership, seems it kind of have woken it up and now has a traditional 250 rev. But eventually I will get an ECU and some other mods to give it that grunt, and of course I will report that later. Now let's talk about power and which is best for a new rider. See, this is where things get a little bit tricky. If you live in a lower elevation state, the 250 has that power. It's quite the difference versus, let's say, Colorado at 13,000 feet. Now, I've ridden both bikes, and in my opinion, if you are a new rider, chances are you will be lugging around on gnarly stuff, which, to be honest, the 300 2-strokes are definitely much easier to ride for a new rider. You won't have to feather that clutch in, and you can mostly stay in second gear, but that front will definitely pop up underneath you pretty easy. But with a few months in, you can get used to it pretty fast. I did not have a problem adjusting to the KTM 300 power, and this video here was me riding at about 4 or 5 months of experience. And as you can see, I was mostly just lugging around trying to get used to single track. In fact, this was actually my very first single track. And my friend was like, here, try out the KTM 300, and I have absolutely no problem adjusting to the 300. I mean, this is probably something I need to get used to anyways. Is the clutch, like I notice is, I mean, I can't really compare, that's just how it is. Now let's talk about the te250. Without a doubt it revs faster. You do have to work it a bit more and requires more shifting, which means it technically is a bit more of an advanced bike and a little bit harder to use because it requires more work. Because I noticed with the 250, I need to be in the res when I hit an obstacle, and there really is no such thing as tractoring through. So you do have to hit obstacles at a little bit more of a momentum. However, it definitely is more forgiving if you blip the throttle or give it too much gas versus the 300, which the front will come up instantly. So this is more of a self-thought. Which do you prefer? The 300 because it's easier to lug around.
So I noticed like on these corners I'm slowing down. Again, I also got injured, so I'm sitting down a lot. I fell on my left wrist, so dude, this suspension is so nice. Again, like it has the power to pick up the speed. It's definitely a huge difference.
And in my personal opinion, I think the 300 is much easier to ride around versus the 250. Or do you prefer the mellow down low 250 dirt bikes?
Holy hell, that is steep. Wow.
That is more forgiving but requires more work. In terms, the 250 are a little bit safer, but keep in mind you do grow into the power and you get used to it. Now, let's talk about my decision here. To be honest, I was scared of two-strokes and their power. I was used to the KLX250 and the DRZ400 friendly down low power. The te250 is still a much more powerful bike than those two. And it took me a little bit to get used to, but it was pretty quick. So all in all, the reason why I went with the te250i, well, was because it had less power than the 300. The very first thing I did when I got the te250i was went to an area called Terrial. And I rode in some flat easy stuff for some time till I got used to it, which was not long. Fast forward a few months later, and I honestly wish I would have went with the 300 because my throttle control and my clutch control was there. And then within a few days, you end up getting used to the bike anyways. As long as those are there, meaning clutch control and throttle control, I think the 300 will be a good choice for high elevation states, or if you're a bit like me on the heavier side. Of course, if you're a new rider and you tend to lug around, the 300 will be a good idea. If your thing is more fast and flowy, 250 will definitely be more of a fun factor. Another thing to consider is also your weight and gear you plan on carrying, so don't leave that out when you're trying to make your decision. So be sure to give that some thought. But to add on, now when I say is the 250 or 300 for a new rider, I say someone who already understands clutch and throttle control and already able to handle it fairly well. So if you're still a brand new rider with absolutely zero riding experience, this video is not really for you, and I would suggest something a bit more mellow like a TTR230 or perhaps a KLX250. But this video is for someone who's been, let's say, borrowing their friend's bike for maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe 4, give it a little bit more time. They can obviously do your average trail rides and don't do much mistakes on easy ATV tracks. Because both of these bikes, to be honest, you could grow into. And overall, I'm going to say the 300 is the way to go because chances are, as a new rider, you will be lugging around anyways. And all that extra power is just extra power you can grow into.
So I noticed, like, you see in my see I'm slowing down right here. This thing just still lugs. Wow, it just picks up the speed again. Like it has the power to pick up the speed. It's definitely a huge difference. yeah, this is it doesn't flame out as easy as the 250, I would say, and you still have that power to go. See, right here I'm climbing, so I gotta clutch. I think I gotta leave it on first right here. Yeah, so that little section was pretty steep, and it's still, my 250 would not be able to lug up that. I had to shift down to first.
Now, here's the thing with owning a powerful bike. You already have basic dirt bike experience and under a year of riding. You will get used to it, and your throttle and clutch control, it will already be there. Because to be honest, I was scared of my te250, but it was not long till I got used to it. It took me a few days. So think of it this way when you first get your proper two-stroke. You become a brand new rider again, but this time it will only maybe last for about 2 or 3 weeks once your confidence is already there with the dirt bikes. Even borrowing my friend's KTM300 for a few trail rides, I even thought, dang, I should have went with the 300 because it was so much easier to ride and to control. And in this video here, you can kind of see I was maybe 3 or 4 months of riding, and I lugged it around tight single track just fine, and believe me, this single track was very steep. Camera does not do justice at all. And as you can see, I did perfectly fine. There were a few rock sections where I can just crawl over it, and I did not have any issues with throttle control or clutch control because it was already there.
First things I noticed is, dude, this thing just slugs, man. Definitely has a lot of power. You can feel it. So, but I would say this is more of a lazy person's bike, man. It has a lot of power. Like, it just goes. I can't really comment on the suspensions because it's been revalved, and all I know is this thing is so plush, like I can sit through this stuff and it's not throwing me off.
Keep in mind, guys, I was a new rider here at 4 to 5 months experience on my very first single track ever, and of course my very first KTM300. So it gives you an idea how a new rider with basic experience can handle something like this. To me, it was just easier to ride during this time. However, keep in mind this was 10,000 feet of elevation, and I also weigh 250 pounds with gear. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and if you do, please hit that bell button as it definitely helps my channel out. Follow my journey on the trails and all the beautiful scenery I take around Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and all the other neighboring states. And I'll catch you guys on my next video.